Welcome, everyone, to Rock M Radio. Just realized the microphone wasn't close to me. We'll get it closer. Brand new live episode of Rock M Radio. I am your host, Sam Snelling. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you smash subscribe, do all those kinds of things. We're going to have like pop-ups at some point. Subscribe, but not tonight. I'm your host, Sam Snelling. It is season 8, episode 2 of Dive Cuts. With me for the first time in season 8, but has been here since the dawn of Dive Cuts, is Matthew Harris. Matt, how are you?
I'm well, sir. It's preseason technically, but we're having recruiting season. Never stops. It always continues, so it's bleeding into preseason prep. But otherwise, I can't complain too much. It's a little hot here, a little dry here, but
Yeah.
Otherwise, aside from too much recruiting and too dry weather, I'm just fine.
Yeah, there's been not a lot of, I guess, basketball news other than rumblings and murmurs and winks and nudges and treks to Branson, Missouri, and all spaces in between. I guess not that many spaces in between, but there's basically been a lot of recruiting, and they've got some guys kind of coming to campus. I guess like the most prevalent news at this point is probably that Jalen Harrelson, a guy who scheduled a Missouri visit, was supposed to be coming in this weekend, correct?
Yeah, he was on the books for this weekend.
He is not on the books this weekend any longer. Looks like not just Missouri, but also our friendly neighbors to the west were trimmed from the list as he canceled visits to both Missouri and Kansas. And even like the distance to East Lansing, Michigan seems a little much for the Harrelsons at this point. And it does seem to be trending for the in-state Indiana schools.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment at this point. Missouri had always felt, I think, relative to everyone else, that they were sort of underrated in the race here. They've put in as much time as any out-of-state school or has in terms of getting to La Lumiere, which is in north central Michigan. It's where Jalen Harrelson plays. He's from Anderson, which is a suburb or exurb kind of community a little bit northeast of Indy. Played at Fishers High School, which is a northeast suburb here in Indy, but a couple of years ago moved to La Lu, which is a basketball factory up kind of north of Fort Wayne, which will have some bearing because Notre Dame is deep in the mix. La Lu is in relative proximity to Notre Dame, but there had been some sort of discussion for a long time. The undercurrent had been, at least here locally, and at least among reporting here locally, that it was unlikely that Harrelson would leave the state or leave the region. And Michigan State had always been framed as kind of the edge of the, circle. If you were to draw a circle around Indy, it was sort of, that was the edge. And that's about 3 hours. When Harrelson first started scheduling visits, he scheduled them to IU, Notre Dame, Michigan State. Again, locally, the question was, would he add any more? Would he go beyond that list? Well, in early August, he did. He added Missouri, he added Purdue, and he added Kansas to that mix. He had gotten through the visit to Michigan State last week, and that next wave of visits was due to start. And Missouri was going to be the first in that wave, the 4th overall. Sunday night, it was reported and came out, that he, he and his family and his inner circle decided, no, we're going to cut 2 visits. We're going to cut Kansas. We're going to cut Missouri. My understanding is that was framed as a distance decision, that, it's a long way away. It's kind of on the edge of the periphery there. Now, if you're Missouri, what you would say is, well, it's 3 hours and 20 minutes from your house to Lansing. It's 5 hours from your house to Columbia, it's 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Lawrence, you could kind of understand because Lawrence is, you're starting to get 7-8 hours, and that's a lot if your family's trying to get out and see you and trying to be involved. And Auburn and Duke had also kind of been involved at various stages, but they faded. But, Missouri, I think, felt like they had put in a lot of time. They felt like they were in a good situation. They had gone out last week and met with the Harrelson family middle of the week, and just, I think, to firm up some things. And they felt, I think, pretty good about where that was going to be, where they stood. And then, obviously the news came down Sunday night. At this point, I think IU and Notre Dame are probably the ones jockeying. IU will probably be the presumptive favorite. They are close to his home. Bloomington's about an hour south. Bloomington also has abundant NIL there. I'm not sure that NIL is going to be the entire driving factor here. Like all top 15 kids, Jalen Harrelson wants to go to the NBA within a year. Micah Shrewsbury can sell a system that probably might be a better fit for him. There's that proximity to Lalu, and they've got a relationship there. It'll be interesting to see sort of where it goes and what he decides to do. But I think at this point, it's going to be an IU or Notre Dame decision. It's hard to feel too frustrated because Missouri, I think if they had gotten him here and they'd made a pitch, I think it might have left a little bit more sting. But this is, I guess, probably the best thing is for him to cancel before you get here and not really just go through the motions. Missouri would say, we wanted him because they always want to sell as much as you can. So, I think anyone who's paid attention to the recruitment always sort of felt like Missouri needed the visit to make up some ground, or at least to, at least in the optics around the recruitment, change some things on the ground. That didn't transpire. So now they move on, and they've got to still try and finish out a 2025 class. But Jalen Harrelson will not be plying his trade in Columbia.
Yeah, and as a guy who's, I think at least early indications to sort of put him, on the outside looking in as far as like a one and done type prospect. He doesn't seem to be that kind of guy. If he goes to Notre Dame or Indiana and spends a year there and isn't happy, I mean, he can always explore the transfer portal, and then, you've established that relationship. You've set yourself up for to be, maybe the rebound guy in a year, and that's not necessarily a bad place to be. It's how they ended up with Tamar Bates. It's how they ended up with Mark Mitchell. And I think we're going to be happy those guys are taking the floor for the Tigers this year.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I think had he made it here, I think there would have been a lot of time scheduled with Tamar Bates. I think if you want to contrast, I think, what the pitch is from Indiana versus a guy who was a top 30 wing who came in looking to try and maybe move from off draft boards onto draft boards. They're not one-to-one. Their games aren't, overlaid perfectly, but, Tamar Bates could talk about the experience in contrast playing for Indiana, playing in that system and in that setup versus what he's had in Columbia. Tony Perkins even isn't Indiana guy, grew up in Indianapolis. There's probably some connections there through mutual acquaintances. So I think there would have been an environment that could have potentially made for a compelling pitch. But, as you said, they've done enough groundwork to where if next year doesn't go well, they can, try and see what might transpire if you were to hit the portal.
Mm-hmm. So then with Harrelson off the board, I think Missouri has kind of turned a lot of their attention to Link Academy guard and also Milwaukee native Davion Hannah. Hannah made it to campus. By all accounts, it went well, as official visits tend to do. But it went well enough that it looks like Missouri is a serious player. What's our latest information on the Hannah situation?
I think everything I've kind of garnered locally, and at least from talking to some national scouts, is that they've closed significant distance here. I don't know if I would go so far as to call them the favorite. I haven't been able to touch base with anybody in Hannah's camp specifically, but I think the impression is, and what people have picked up through the grapevine, is that Alabama for a long time was considered the leader in the clubhouse. Um, that changed coming out of the Missouri visit, um, to the point where it might be neck and neck there. So that's one key development there. Additionally, there's one other team that's fighting to stay in this, and that's Cincinnati. The Bearcats have put in a lot of legwork. They were one of the earliest people to get in and recruit Hannah. They've got him scheduled for a visit in early October, although there's been some reporting that maybe they want to try and move that up.
Yeah.
I talked to a national scout earlier this week who said that there might be some shakeups in terms of what Hannah does to his list or his visit order. I had heard that potentially his visit to Michigan State, which is next weekend, might be off. Right now, he is scheduled to go to Ohio State. There's nothing to indicate that he won't make that trip. But if, the best sort of consensus here is that Alabama was leading, Missouri's closed the distance, and Cincinnati is trying their darndest to hang in here and be that third team. We'll see what happens. The indications are that, Hannah might be tracking towards a deadline that's after signing day. Missouri's going to be fine with that. He'll sign it like top 30, top 25 kid when he wants to sign the LOI.
Right.
I think the interesting thing is there's been, not from Missouri side, not from any Missouri sources or any Missouri outlets, some numbers that were thrown around about NIL that were potentially on the table for the first year, and that was a 7-figure amount. I haven't been able to confirm that. It would be interesting if that is the dollar amount. Missouri's never really gone above, at least to our knowledge, 7 figures for, NIL compensation. It would seem odd that they would do that for a freshman at this point.
Well, freshman and not even like
a bona fide one and done kid.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I don't mean to like discount the kind of player Hannah is. I think we would all be thrilled if you landed him. But he's in that like Honor Batang range where this is looking like a multi-year guy. And so, I mean, I think we had kind of both heard that that number that was north of $1 million, and my first thought was like the only way that makes sense is if it's multi-year.
Yeah.
If it's like, we'll throw in a little bit of cash before you actually hit campus, you'll get 2 years, and this is that number. Then I can sort of see it. But if it's for just a year, then that's
Missouri's going to need money when it go, and they're not hurting by all accounts. The NIL budget is fine at Missouri, but they would like to, I think, have that liquidity to do what they did this spring in the portal, which is go out and really get some difference makers to backfill. So that could be compromised a little bit if you're splashing some cash on a freshman who's not a for sure one and done. He's on draft boards now. Now maybe Hannah has a monster senior year at Link, plays himself into the top 15, becomes a McDonald's All-American. Come next March, people are throwing him on draft boards and talking about, man, we didn't see this leap coming. Then maybe that dollar figure makes more sense. But right now, I'm not so sure. But it'll be interesting to watch what Missouri does moving forward and if they can keep spinning the momentum forward. They went to Link last week. They kind of bopped around last Wednesday. They were at Link. They were down at Little Rock Christian Academy to look at J.J. Andrews, who came up for a visit last weekend. Then they jetted over to see Jalen Harrelson and his family, or to see Jalen Harrelson's family before, they went to East Lansing. So I think there's confidence. I think that confidence is backed up when you talk to people outside of Missouri's circle. We'll see if it's enough to get over the line. Alabama has a lot of irons in the fire right now. They're about ready to land a commitment from a top 40 forward in London Jemison, but they're trying to hang in for the number one overall prospect in this class, probably the likely number one draft pick at some point, AJ DeBonsa. That is going to be an expensive proposition.
Yeah.
To get DeBonsa to Tuscaloosa or anywhere. So if, at some point the budget has to be minded, and Bama is active in the transfer portal too. They've been able to get some guys, according to national folks, to take some discounts in the portal, but I don't think AJ DeBonce is going to be signing up to take a discount to play for Nate Oates. Michigan State's kind of looking at some combo guards. Ohio State's looking at some combo guards. Cincinnati's probably going to get a commitment from Keshawn Tiller, who's a point guard, but they would like 2 ball handlers. Davion Hannah's a ball handler. He is atop the Missouri board. I think that's the distinction there. He is 1A, 1B, 1C at this point. Everyone else kind of is minding other prospects. Missouri's all in here now. So I think it'll be interesting if that focused effort winds up yielding a commitment for him. But it would be impressive if they've done it. They didn't offer him until mid-June. I don't think they really saw him a ton live until Peach Jam, and then they fought like heck coming out of July to get a visit on the books, and that happened in September, and it suddenly ramped up. So it's a testament to what this staff will do if they really want to stick their nose in and fight. If they've gone from basically zero here in June to being a player for a top 30 kid. We'll see if they can pull it off, though.
Yeah, I think we're a lot more likely to see these kind of situations when NIL is as prevalent as it is. I feel like if you're willing to sort of be strong in your offers, you can make up a whole lot of ground pretty quickly. Missouri, to their credit, have shown that if they invest time, and even like with a guy like Harrelson, I don't think Harrelson was listening to Missouri because they were offering him the most money. I think he was listening to Missouri because he liked what they were pitching.
Yeah.
And and the money is one of those things that, okay, well, that's as long as it's close. It's like, I think that's sort of the impression that I got from the the Harrelson camp recruitment. But with Hannah, he released what was it, like a top 8 or something like that? Top 9, and Missouri was not on it, and that was in July.
Yeah,
and I think like right about that time is when you were kind of picking up that they were maybe in this a little bit more than than I think the teams on the 9 maybe realized at the time.
I think the thing people have to keep in mind, and national analysts have, to their credit, talked about this for about a month or two. It's been really slow in terms of what we're seeing in terms of list cut downs, in terms of visits. We're seeing big lists. Like, you and I are sickos enough when we see this. It's usually like a top 5 to top 7 sometimes. And if it's a top 7, it's like, oh, that's a big one. We're seeing guys put out top 10s, top 12s. And the rationale there is pretty obvious, which is the more suitors we have, maybe the more competition we create, which, at the margin can get us some more NIL dollars. I think eventually what happens is probably half these lists are just there for negotiating purposes. And if you look at, Hannah, once it got past the Alabama visit, he said he was going to reschedule half his visits. I'm skeptical those happen. And if there's another reshuffling that knocks another visit or 2 off, you're going to have gone from 12 to 4, which makes sense at this stage of his recruitment. That Missouri has pushed and made up ground is still notable in that sense. Even if there was an NIL sort of ploy to it, you still have to get to the point where somebody has to listen to you long enough to get to the NIL discussion. So I think either way, Missouri's done good work here, but I also think there are market forces at play here. And, if Hannah dropped some schools that maybe weren't going to be able to finance, a salary, that makes sense to him. That's just the world we live in, but it's been big lists. It's been slow cut downs. There have been, I think, some guys who have moved around a lot of visits at this point. I was looking at it today. Most of the guys that have committed in Missouri's, they've put out now 60 offers in 2025. About half are off the board now, but the guys who've committed are all 3-star dudes. Most of them are 3-star guys that they're not going to get a high major offer out of their senior year. They just need to pick a spot and hope they can develop and get looks in the portal. But the top end talent, a lot of guys still floating out there. They've cut their list, but they aren't really in decision-making mode yet. Hannah's kind of in that same group. We'll see how quickly he gets there, and if Missouri's momentum holds up. But if it does, I think it'll be a nice addition, not just because he's talented, but because now you're getting 2 ball handlers in this class, and you can go find some other needs in the portal. But 2 pretty good ball handlers is not bad, and if they can add Nick Randall to that, I think it'll be a pretty okay class, when all is said and done.
Yeah, I don't with the tumble of Aaron Rowe in the rankings. It's easy to kind of lose sight of, like the fact that he's still a guard with a lot of potential. He's just kind of got to get his development right. Randall's a guy that they've liked for a long time and are excited to hopefully be adding him to the class. But it certainly is notable that if you can start adding top 30 level guys, even 1 per class, and then you can kind of double back in and pull in somebody out of the portal, like a Perkins or like a Mark Mitchell, who's going to be able to provide much needed production. And I think you're building the kind of roster that is sustainable and can kind of get this thing, I think, to where we all kind of want it.
Yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind here is that if they have this 3-man class, let's say it's Hannah, Rowe, and Randall, that's still a top 18 class. It would have finished anywhere between 16th and 20th in the composite the last 5 years. It's not a top 5 class, but I think a lot of what drove that was Missouri took 5 guys.
Yeah.
And that boosted their score a little bit. I think I've written that, like, if you just looked at their average recruit rating, it was toward the lower end of a top 5 class. They weren't like stacking top 20 guys. They took, 3 top 50 guys, 2 developmental guys in a time when most people are only taking 3 freshmen total. Missouri took 2 more, and that kind of boosted them. I think this class this year might be more representative of what Missouri's trying to do, which is, 3 guys, 1 really highly rated guy. I think if Rowe had hung in there, it would have probably pushed it closer to like a top 15, somewhere between 10th and 15th. But Missouri's going to get 3 guys. They're going to get 2 ball handlers. They're going to get 1 high-end guy who can score it, a little bit in Hannah. They're going to get a developmental guy in Butta, Randall. And, they'll hope that getting, Rowe into their system will recuperate sort of his standing there. But this is, I think, kind of the model of what they want to do. And then go into the spring and begin identifying, I think, some more plug and play needs. But this is, I think last year was an outlier, and this year is probably more representative of what they're trying to do in terms of high school recruiting. So this is what I would probably put more stock in as a roster building mode.
Well, and you noted on Twitter before we came on that they did offer a sort of a combo guard in the 2025 class. Are we thinking that that's backup in case things go south with Hannah, or are we thinking that there's a possibility that may be one of those we'll catch you in a year or two kind of portal offers?
I'm inclined at this point to think portal offers.
Yeah.
No offense to the kid they offered tonight, but Missouri, I think they felt for the last year that they love the freshmen they got. They're very happy with them, but they feel very young. And I think for Missouri, it's if they're going to take freshmen, they want to try and get as many. They're going to at least be ready to go physically and hold their own early on when they get here. Taking a 3-star guy who's going to be kind of buried to the back of the bench kind of runs counter to that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of those, recruitment offers, and we'll monitor this year and we'll see how you do when you get to your next stop. And, it's an Atlanta kid, and it's at OTE. So maybe they're thinking, we're going to have CY down there. We know OTE has a good development program. We know Corey Frazier at OTE. So I could see that as more of a developmental sort of offer than a legit one. But we'll see what happens there. I don't think most people back in July would have said Davion Hannah is going to be the headliner of this class, and things can change. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. 2026. We did kind of talk that JJ Andrews was on campus. Is that this past weekend?
Yep.
And him and Sheik Pearson, who is is he 2027?
He's 2026.
2026. And then there's another big from 2026 coming in this weekend.
Yeah.
It's that Kiner Asprilla.
Kiner Asprilla.
Asprilla.
Yeah.
It's a great name.
It is. Kind of an interesting prospect. Missouri offered him 12 days ago on September 8th. 12 days later, he's going to come for an official visit. That is an expedited timeline. I don't know if a commitment will come out of that, but it's certainly a quick turnaround from offer to visit. Asprilla is kind of a guy that is in a weird spot. He's a top 35 kid nationally in 2026. He's the number one recruit at the center position, but he has less than 10 offers. The only like blue blood offer he has is Kansas. That came in early August. He's only taken, I think, one unofficial visit, and that was to Providence in August. There have been some Northeast programs that have kind of passed through his school, but this will be his first, as far as I can tell, official visit. And if you're bringing in a 26 kid in on an official visit, it implies that he is a major focus for you, which will be interesting because they've got three really good local bigs that they could tap. They're going to, I think, get him in maybe ahead of like a guy like Tristan Reed or Ethan Taylor, although I think Taylor might be in at some point this month for an unofficial. He's a big out of the JOCO side in Kansas City, and I think one of the Shawnee Mission schools. So if you're, offering on September 8th, getting him out here less than 2 weeks later, and it's an official visit, which your other bigs have not been, it certainly speaks to a prioritization or a potential prioritization of Asprilla. But I think the one thing I would tell people, and I'm going to have a visit primer up on Rock M Plus tomorrow, the term developmental very much fits Kiner Asprilla. He looks like a grown man. He is 7 foot, 270 pounds, and with a +2 or +3 inch wingspan. Plays with a really high motor, runs the floor really well, really mobile for a guy his size. Looks like he could walk on campus and at least lean on Josh Gray, respectively. Does a great job on the backboards, great rebounder, good positional defender, but the offensive game is unshaped at this point. And to be fair, context is needed. Asprilla played up this year. He should have been playing on the 16U level. New York Rins, which is his AAU program, moved him up to the 17U circuit, and that's tough. Even if you do have the body of a 18-year-old, you are still playing against actual 18-year-olds. Mm-hmm. He was in a reserve role for them. I think he had to miss one session, so he only played 12 games. He didn't really I think he only averaged like 5 touches a game, averaged 4.2 points, 5 rebounds. Not a real heavy producer for them. And when you watch his film, a lot of his touches are putbacks, dump offs, rim runs, an occasional post up where he buries a smaller guy in the lane and puts up a hook shot. But there's not like a lot of refined post development. They're not using him as a screener and roller. They're not having him pick and pop. He is there to do some cleanup work. And, if you are offering Kiner Asprilla at this point, you are making a long-term bet that we're getting a guy who looks like a high major big, who plays really hard, who we know will rebound, who we know can block shots. We'll get him on campus, and we'll get him with Rob Summers, and we'll just go to work on the offensive piece. And he's also got 2 years before he gets to campus, realistically, so a lot can happen. But if you were to go to YouTube tonight and watch him, you'd be like, this guy's a top 50 kid. You're buying the package, and you're buying sort of the kit, and you're going to do some customization there. But he looks the part. I think people are going to be tempted to say that, because of where he comes from with the RINS program. He looks like Kofi Coburn or Dama Sanogo. Those are two guys that came out of that program. Both needed a little bit of work, but both certainly looked like they could play high major basketball. I think Kiner Spree is kind of in that range there, but it makes sense to go get that kind of guy.
Yeah.
I think, there's value in what they're doing with Josh Gray, and I think there's value in having guys who, at minimum, are going to rebound, rim protect, and rim finish for you. And Spree has already shown he can do that. If you can add to that, man, that's even better. But if you're going to get him in campus and you get him here and he can at least do those things for you early on, there's value in that. So either way, it's a smart play. It'll just be interesting to see moving forward. Again, it's a little early to talk about it, but how they prioritize kind of the big position. I think they want to take two bigs. Which guys wind up getting prioritized? I think right now, Sheik Pearson and based on Espree's visit, might be the guys that they're prioritizing, which would make sense. Their frames are contrasting, and their games are a little contrasting. But again, still early, but it'll be worth. That's sort of the undercurrent or a storyline to watch, is what they want to do at the big man position in 26.
Yeah, Pearson's a little more feathery at this point.
Yeah. Both of them can rebound and rim protect. I think you can move Sheik a little bit more on the block, but he's shown the ability to step out a little bit. I think Sheik is a little smoother in post-up situations. Just looks like he's got a little bit more polish at this point, and that's relative. But I think if you were to ask Missouri, they would say, we liked what we did with Peyton and Trent Burns. We got two guys that we know have size, have length, can rim protect on defense, and can rebound, but we may get some contrast on the offensive end and how they operate. So I think that that's the thing to look at here is Asprilla and Pearson would operate a little differently on the offensive end of the floor and in different ways there.
Yeah, and guys that, could actually play them together as much as, subbing one out for each other. So, I think there's some advantage to kind of go that direction. Are there any other 2026 guys that you're particularly kind of keeping an eye on?
Andrew's coming out of that visit. Missouri was first. He'll be headed to LSU, NC State, Arkansas, and this week he added a trip to Marquette. I think Andrews is a really, really interesting guy to follow because he's the bona fide top 20 kid. I love his tape. He's not really a creator off the bounce right now, but man, anything you want to do, from having him push in transition to having him space the floor to having him act as a cutter to even getting on the glass, he does it. And he's efficient at everything. He's one of the most efficient guards at his age group, playing on a loaded roster, led a loaded roster in scoring. Great kid, high academic kid, comes from a good family. His dad is a former NFL offensive lineman. Everything you want in terms of a prospect's background fits kind of the mold of what Missouri has looked for at that wing position, which is somebody who can be, an absolute terror in the break and who you can at least space out and have him as a cutter. They did that with Demoy Hodge. They did that a little bit last year with Tamar Bates. Honor Batang would potentially probably get there. JJ Andrews is that kind of mold. They had Demoy Hodge again. So he fits that one. I think it's interesting because he's an Arkansas kid. His dad's an Arkansas native, played at Arkansas, but that family's moved around a lot because of his dad's career. I think his mom is actually a North Carolina native. So I think what'll be interesting is we saw this with Honor Batang, where his family had sort of moved around a little bit and then settled eventually in Arkansas. Hasn't grown up, born, raised, steeped in sort of that environment, which I think obviously tilts more towards, the Razorbacks. It'll be interesting too, because, at some point Eric Musselman just started prioritizing either the portal or going after some national guys. What's John Calipari going to do in terms of finding that balance between prioritizing a home state kid versus looking outside? Mm-hmm. He's going to have some interesting decisions to make because there are three guys around Arkansas. Jalen Montanati's from Tulsa. Aiden Chronister is from Northwest Arkansas, and Andrews is from Little Rock. All three of those guys are ranked between 10th, 15th and 40th in the composite. They're all wings. They all do things a little bit different. Does Cal prioritize any one of them? And would it even matter if he did? Is there that home state advantage? So again, we'll see. There's still a long time to go here, but I think there's some potential openings for Missouri to make some headway with J.J. Andrews if they wanted to, and that would be a big get, obviously, in the 26 class.
I think it's interesting just to kind of stay on Andrews a little bit, mainly because we've talked in the past about Arkansas recruiting, and Arkansas's ability to really kind of land a lot of those those top level guys, with a couple of the really truly elite guys slipping away to Kentucky,
or Florida or someone.
Well, when Cal was there specifically, and so it is going to be interesting to see, because Cal has sort of talked, at least, and Cal loves to talk, but he has talked about sort of reforming his approach to roster building. And so is he more likely to be taking kind of these multi-year guys, or is he going to go back to prioritizing, just the most elite talent that they can get? And so it is like, I think that the 2026 test case is probably going to be a good one, as we see guys who would traditionally be high up on Arkansas's list, who would have probably been huge priorities for guys like Mike Anderson. Obviously, Muss is Muss. He's an assassin, so I don't really think he kind of fit that mold. But guys have traditionally, coaches traditionally in Arkansas, have always prioritized keeping those top 100 kids in the state. And here we have a good test case. So I just wanted to make sure that this is going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah. Other names that I'm sort of keeping an eye on at this point. They went out to see Tony Bryant, who's going to be a top 20-ish kind of kid. He's with Knight Riders in Florida. CY's got connections in Florida. Do they get traction there? They went to see Anthony Thompson, a top 15 wing out of the Dayton, Cincinnati area in Ohio. Rob Summers has spent a lot of time coaching in Ohio, which is at Miami of Ohio, which I'm sure people have come here for geography lessons on Southwest Ohio. Miami, Ohio is basically in that region of where Anthony Thompson's from. Missouri has connections to his AAU program in Indiana Elite. Mabor Majak, Guardian, used to run that program. So there's some connections there. Do they get any sort of traction with, guys like Bryant, Thompson? I'm looking at the rest of this. It looks like Aiden Chronister is probably not going to happen. But, some of those national guys that may be from outside the footprint, regionally, are they going to be able to get in the mix there? I'm curious, if the Esprit thing becomes a long-term running sort of recruitment, because if that's the case, which other local big is going to get sort of the nod there? I think it'll be interesting how they sort of view Tristan Reed. Tristan Reed is measured 6'7", but with a +6 wingspan. So he's 6'7" with a 7'2" wingspan. Mm-hmm. And can kind of play the 4 or the 5. Is he viewed as a post, or is he viewed as sort of a 4-man? And, does that change how the recruitment goes there? But that's where we are at this point. I think Andrews is the clear priority. I think it's interesting that they've had Sheik Pearson out twice for unofficials, and they're going to get Esprit on campus this week. So it's going to be we still have some time to go, but you can already kind of see a board forming in 26, and we haven't even hit signing day in 25.
Yeah.
And God help me, people will soon be asking about the 2027 class too. And a guy from your alma mater.
Oh, I was going to say, and didn't they just offer some 2028 kid the other day?
Yeah, they have. They've got 4 2028 offers out.
We don't need to talk about it.
Oh,
I'll save you.
I haven't. No, I have not watched Miles Simpson yet, guys. I have not. Gonna gonna wait till this winter and then I'll tune in and watch games. But yeah, I felt weird.
Get to see Justin Mathis and the Webster Groves Statesman win a lot of games, probably.
Probably. It's a good class in St. Louis at this point. Principia is looking pretty good. Burroughs has some guys. V-Side's gonna have some guys. It's not a bad little setup.
Jay Blossom was just inducted into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame.
That he was.
Yeah. So he's now leading Principia, which is always funny. When we were coaching at Webster, like he always made a big deal of, like we beat private schools. That's what we do at Webster. And now he's at one. So
yeah. Yeah.
Jay, if you're listening, I am always gonna, always gonna bring that up whenever somebody mentions that.
Betrayed your values, Jay.
Print up, traitor. So I don't know that we have a whole lot else to get to. Workouts or practices, have they started?
I think they're doing kind of individual skill workouts, but I don't think the formal start of practices until October 1. But I think they're still probably can do some skill work and some team workouts. They've had guys in the building. Recruits have been at workouts. We've seen the IG photos, so that they are coming together and doing stuff in team-based settings. But we'll see sort of when they get into October, sort of how things begin to look. Otherwise, we're starting preseason content prep. That's all we're doing.
Yeah, and I think we're still talking about trying to get back down to Columbia to kind of see some progress, hopefully in October. Hopefully we can line that up and bring you guys some more insight before the season starts. But yes, I am knee deep in these previews. I've got all the non-con previews have been done and written for like a couple weeks now. They're scheduled out. Like that's a beautiful thing. I'm just like hoping we don't have some catastrophic injury that I have to like go back and update anything on a Mizzou opponent. Obviously, we want everybody to be healthy all the time, right, Matt?
We root for players here. We root for players.
We just root for our team to have the most success, but we like other guys to have success too.
Yeah, we want you all to be blessed.
Except Kansas. What else was I going to say? Yeah, so you guys have put together and are nearly complete with all the player previews. Those look phenomenal. The SEC team previews are forthcoming. I'm about a third of the way written on those. We're churning out, man. If you are not already subscribed to Rock M Plus, I would recommend it because it helps us do a lot of these things. But we are sharing a lot of this information. There's stuff that we've talked about today that people on Rock M Plus have known for days and sometimes weeks. So head over there. You can get signed up. You can see all of our a lot of the information on how we kind of put together our previews, our projections, all that kind of stuff is really kind of cool. And then, you can interact with us and we can talk about Mizzou basketball. So that's all I've got. We're going to get under 45 minutes, Matt. How about that?
Not going to ruin it.
Anything else before we get out of here?
No, just I'm really excited about what we have coming down the pipeline. Really excited that our subscribers have helped give us some of the resources to do that kind of work. We hope that, if you're not already aboard, you sign up and see what we're doing. Can
I just tell you like how awesome this interview video is? Like being able to essentially, like as I was writing the Oklahoma preview, I just pulled up a clip trove of Duke Miles and just watched Duke Miles play basketball while I was writing. It helped form my opinion on what kind of player Duke Miles can be for Oklahoma. Like that alone is making life so much easier for us, and I think it's creating a better product overall for the readers.
Yeah, we hope that's the case, and we've already started doing preseason prognostication. We have kind of a running thread that's sort of us putting in other outlets and what they're sort of what their forecasts are. We sort of weigh in on them. We hope that people would jump in and sort of say, oh, why do you think they think that? And, we think that's a really interesting way to sort of have a sane discussion around expectations, to sort of slowly put in what those preseason polls are and sort of really look at how people are viewing the league and sort of where Missouri's place in that is. And Watkins is asking all kinds of questions and screen grabbing spreadsheet ones, even though he could be going to date a rapper and just making things that look pretty and nice. He refuses to. He refuses to buy into the free resource that is on the internet that would let him do it. He wants to keep giving people the screen grabs, though. So I respect the brand, but that's all I really got.
He likes the him and Nate Edwards are like addicted to the Excel screenshots.
There's a better way.
So y'all are off. The Mats are off next week. I will be back with me in an interview. Matt, you want me to tease the guest?
Sure. We've already blown through the 45-minute window here.
We've got the godfather of college basketball analytics coming to a sit down with yours truly. So we're going to talk to Ken Palm next week. We had Ken Palm on the pod, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I reached back out mostly because I had some questions on some data stuff. And I was just like, oh, and by the way, would you like to come on the pod? And he's like, sure. So next Thursday, be on the lookout for that interview. I'm excited to talk to Ken again. And then in 2 weeks, Dive Cuts is back with more Mizzou basketball. In 2 weeks, it will be October. They will be practicing, and we will basically be a month out from college basketball. So make sure you're subscribed here, iTunes, Spotify, wherever. Not even iTunes anymore. It's just Apple Podcasts. What is this, like 2017? Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. See you on the forums.
See you guys.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.